So I've spent the last few months making content on this guy, Philip Ziba, partially because I want the practice at improving my science communication skills, but also just because he kind of ticks me off in a weirdly personal way. Also, yes, hi, I got a microphone. We're trying to work on the audio and visual quality of this channel, one $20 investment at a time. Philip follows a content model that I have started calling the chump and dump. He takes random, dissociated ideas off of Twitter, Reddit, and everywhere else, scrapes them together, chalks it along with some AI-generated imagery and creepy music, and then posts it to TikTok as a conspiracy theory. With, of course, zero regard for the context of the video or his viewers. And it does have an impact on his viewers. I mean, like, 10 million likes? This is not nothing. Sure, some of these people might just think it's a fun, silly theory, but some of these people do believe it. And when I see more and more of these creators popping up everywhere on the internet, that's when it starts to become a problem. I know a lot of people see my content debunking, my attempts at science communication or whatever, and they think, like, what's your deal? Why does this bother you? Because these creators kind of posit themselves as just being there to share a fun theory or whatever. Honestly, I think that's really disingenuous. I know that might be a little bit hard to get behind, so let me walk you through it. Hi, my name is Miriam. I do science communication, I talk about linguistics, I also talk about comic books and sometimes K-pop. Today we're gonna talk about Philip Ziba and other creators like him, and why they make me genuinely insane, but more importantly, why it matters, because it does. Before I get into specifics, I want to be clear. I'm not here to dunk on someone for asking questions. Curiosity about ancient history is wonderful. It's part of why I do what I do. But there's a difference between curiosity and misinformation, and there's a difference between asking questions and manufacturing doubt. Before I said that I was going to make a video about ideology and how creators contribute to a harmful ideological environment, and I am. But first, I think we have to play a little game, maybe, and see if we can establish what Philip does believe. How am I going to do that if he doesn't explicitly say what he does or does not believe in? Rough guesstimation and vibe checking, mostly. But also, we can clearly establish what Philip does not believe in, thanks to his content. Philip does not believe that the pyramids were built by Egyptians. He consistently makes comments implying that they were made by something else, maybe someone, I'm not really sure. Philip does not believe that Easter Island and the Polynesian Triangle were inhabited by, Polynesians. Rather, he believes in the lost continent of Mu. I'm not getting into Mu today. Philip does not believe that different civilizations of varying strengths and weaknesses from across the globe could have independently built similar structures. Of course not. Rather, he believes in Hancock-style hyperdiffusion, because he's choosing violence, I guess. Philip does not believe that we are still capable of building pyramids, or in his words, pyramid-like structures. Rather, he believes that there was some sort of secret lost technology that we've, forgotten, I guess. Philip does not believe that the Bosnian rock hill is a hoax. Philip does not believe that ancient stone-cutting techniques were sufficient enough to produce the shapes that they did. Ancient lasers, I guess. Philip does not believe that buoyancy is sufficient enough to move the stones used to build large structures, i.e. pyramids. And finally, Philip does not believe that baskets, purses, and the like are used to carry and store items. Don't believe me? You can go watch my last video. We had to cover it extensively in that one. There's more bullshit, but I think you get the idea. My concern is not necessarily with Philip specifically, although he does concern me, like, a lot. I mean, his next video right after the one I last paused this series on is literally about flat Earth. And the comment section under that video is filled to the brim of people saying that they agree with him, or they believe him, or that now they're curious too, and they want to look into it themselves. I know what you're thinking. Okay, he's a crank. Who cares? Here's why you should care. This is not a series of random disconnected errors, okay? This is a pattern, and this pattern has a name. This diet of weird, inconsistent conspiracies, alternate racist history, lies, and just blatant bullshit is called hyperdiffusionism. It's a really old idea. It's older than TikTok, it's older than me, it's probably older than all of you. And it posits that a single ancient, lost, usually white is the underhanded implication, civilization is the origin point of, like, all human achievement, which obviously it's bullshit, but people still believe in it. Don't look into Tartaria, you'll start to lose your mind. If that sounds a little bit suspicious to you, it's because it is. And speaking of suspicious...
Pyramids are not tombs. Changed my mind. This is a real Egyptian tomb, where mummies of pharaohs were actually found.
Okay, I have to pause the yap for a minute to debunk. I'm sorry guys, my second major is Egyptology and Egyptian history. I have to do this. Moron, if you're trying to prove that the pyramids aren't tombs, then you picked, like, the wrongest one to do that too. Philip uses the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid as evidence to claim that the pyramids were not tombs. The Great Pyramid was built in the Old Kingdom of Egypt, which is the time during which many of what we now consider to be Egyptian pyramids were built. And yes, it was definitely intended as a tomb. Philip makes this argument that it doesn't look like many other Egyptological tombs, but the pictures that he shows during this part of the argument are literally pictures of Merasank's tomb. That was Khufu's granddaughter, as in the granddaughter of the guy who built the pyramid that he's saying wasn't a tomb. First of all, Philip, art styles can change. Second of all, do you know how hard red granite is to work with? Like, the fact that the entire interior chamber is built with red granite blocks is a flex in itself. This was not an easy thing to do. This is super impressive, actually. Just because they didn't want to bedazzle it doesn't mean it's not cool. Also, Philip, let's think. What was a huge problem for pharaohs at the time? Thieves! He was worried about his shit getting stolen, and it probably was! Finally, I give you Wikipedia's list of human remains found in pyramids. I think we're done here. The problem isn't that this sort of debunking is not easy to do, because frankly, it's pretty easy. Anyone can do what I do. Anybody can sit in my spot and recount facts proudly like a 7th grader on science fair day. It isn't something that's excessively difficult, at least not physically. See, in order to debunk a video like this, all I had to do was recognize that something was wrong with Philip's claim and then take the necessary steps to prove him wrong, even though I already knew he was wrong. But let's do a little walkthrough, and then maybe you can take these skills and use them more often in your own life. One of the first things that caught my eye in his video was the obviously AI-generated imagery being used in the background. That by itself doesn't mean that everything he's saying is inaccurate, although it does point to an apparent lack of easily available imagery to support the claim, and an overall willingness to support machine-generated imagery that steals the work of thousands of hardworking human artists, but hey, who's counting? The second thing that I want to talk about is like the Steven Crowder format. It's engagement bait at the lowest level. He takes an obviously socially acceptable claim like the pyramids were tombs, one based on so much evidence that it would be disrespectful to bother recounting it here, and then inverts it and asks his audience to prove him wrong, or change his mind if you want to go with the actual Crowder quote, but it's really the same thing, right? Because why would someone disbelieve something so obvious? So I'm seeing red flags everywhere. Clickbait title, AI slop, the conspiracy music, and then Philip makes the mistake of opening his mouth, because the evidence he chooses to use, and this might be where academia becomes more of a barrier than a true tool, immediately stuck out to me as poorly chosen and evidently painfully misunderstood. I told you why, factually speaking, and then I debunked him. But why do I know this? Why was I able to recognize this as bullshit fresh off the bat, without having to look anything up, without even having to open my phone? Well, for one, I've had a lifelong interest in ancient Egypt. Where most people left it behind in elementary school, it's stuck with me. And now I'm heading into my 4th year at a competitive research school with tens of Egyptological credits under my belt. Of course, I could tell without even having to check that he was wrong. I hope so, with all the thousands of dollars I've paid in tuition over the years. I've got a serious leg up on most people in this specific subject, and of course that doesn't mean that my knowledge is perfect or that I'm a genius. I'm a student. I'm in a constant process of learning and revising and fixing the holes in my own knowledge. But that does mean that I know more than someone who has never attended any of these lectures. But that's kind of like a problem, isn't it? Let's pretend for a second that you're not a little bit unhinged like me, and you don't attend weekly 2-hour history lessons on the New Kingdom of Egypt, and that you don't own literal textbooks on hieroglyphics. You're doom-scrolling TikTok on your lunch break, drinking your 2nd Red Bull of the day, not sponsored, and you stumble across frat boy Fredericton over here saying he doesn't think the pyramids were tombs. But you're pretty sure they were, right? So you open Google and you type in, were the pyramids tombs? And the first search result says yes, but then the second result is this weird Reddit thread saying that actually they weren't and Egyptologists were wrong, and that guy sounds pretty confident. And you know, he's fairly convincing, so now you're kind of confused. It's not like a high school education gives you a ton of details about the 5th dynasty or anything. And even if it did, most people don't exactly remember all of the details of their 10th grade history class. What is the average person supposed to do in this situation when common sense leads to conflicting answers? You don't have time to sit there combing through links until you find a .gov or a .edu, because your lunch break is almost over, and most people people don't enjoy doing academic research in their already heavily limited free time. Now, when I saw this, all I had to do was articulate things that I already knew and find a few reliable sources to further back me up. But sometimes, especially when I'm unfamiliar on a topic, it takes me a lot longer, and often I end up deferring to somebody else's expertise entirely. But mostly, this is a process of extreme tedium, figuring out what a historical site is, where it's located, and trying to understand Philip or whoever else's claim. And I have to take the steps to research the place or people and figure out what actually happened. Cross-reference with multiple different sites just to ensure maximum accuracy, making sure they're .gov or .edu websites, yes, but also papers that have been peer-reviewed in the relevant field. Books written by someone with actual experience in the topic, making sure that a claim I'm making has the substance to back it up, because if it doesn't hold up under my scrutiny, it sure as hell won't under the internet's. I miss things, yes, but I try my best to keep things consistent and accessible where I can. For me personally, transparency is everything, which is why I keep all my sources in the description, organized as best I can, with notes and information written for what part of the video I use them for. Although, this system has its own issues because YouTube description's character count is like remarkably limited, and I don't know how I can make anything longer than a 30 to 40 minute video without running out of space in the description. So if you guys have any ideas for something that I can do to like keep up the same system that doesn't require people to make an additional account on something or give their personal information, etc., I would love to hear it. I've considered making like a free FREE, as in you pay no money, Patreon tier so that I can publish posts that go with each video and go into more detailed explanations, because then I could actually tell you like what specifically I used a given source for. But it seems like such a dick move to use like a Patreon. I'm a tiny YouTube channel. I'm literally just some guy. Researching is a process of guessing and second guessing and verifying and then double end verifying and then triple end verifying, and sometimes still getting it wrong. And I already have a leg up on other people, because I've spent 3 years at this university taking tons and tons of classes, and I grew up in a family with an academic background. So this researching process, this process of questioning and verifying, was drilled into me at a very young age. I'm also lucky enough to have friends that I can consult on topics I don't know about. One of them literally helped me with the physics-related section in my previous video. And furthermore, I have the free time to dedicate to this in the first place. I can only imagine how much more overwhelming it must be to not have these advantages, and to be subject to the constant barrage of information the internet subjects us to without the inherent filters myself and some others have come to develop. I am not calling people who fall for Philip's content and others like him stupid. Rather, I am placing the blame of preventing the wider public from accessing the necessary information that would lead them to dismiss such content on the type of information age that we currently live in. I know that sounds like a vague finger-pointy thing to say, so let me explain. I think conspiracy content creators can be blamed for a few things, and some of those reasons can explain how and why so many people fall prey to their ideas. 30 years ago, the headlines were the headlines. If the Wall Street Journal said that an ancient tablet was dug up in Mexico, that meant an ancient tablet was dug up in Mexico. Maybe your neighbor across the hall thought something different, but you know, his apartment also reeked of weed 24/7, so why would you listen to him? Things like that. Nowadays, the Wall Street Journal or the Guardian or whoever else says that a tablet was dug up in Mexico, and then somebody else on the internet says that it looks an awful lot like a similar tablet that was dug up in China. And then you get morons like Philip who say that somehow ancient Chinese people were writing ancient Mesoamerican tablets and that there's time travel, and now everybody's confused. And it doesn't matter that it's not true, because it sounds like it might be a little bit true, maybe? The biggest problem is that I'm not just trying to prove somebody wrong, even when I know with 200% certainty that they are wrong. The biggest problem is that I'm trying to prove myself right. Anyone can sit in a chair and say that they think COVID was a bioweapon dug up in an ancient Mongolian cave, and that will spread to thousands of people in seconds, even if the first guy doesn't believe it, because it doesn't matter. And then someone like me, and yes, I know this is self-inflicted, but still, has to go and prove that COVID-19, a sickness that killed millions of people and continues to hurt people even today, isn't part of some grand conspiracy. Like, how do you prove that? I know it's true, you know it's true, and while the people who claim things are blatantly dangerous, they are far from my only concern. In fact, there's an entire epidemic of creators that quietly sow conspiracies while pandering to a left-wing audience. There's one creator in particular who comes to mind. I got into a slight tiff with her under one of her videos wherein she claims that slaves did not, in fact, build the pyramids. Now, I could make an entire hour-long video explaining why people get confused about it, the intricacies of labor and coercion, and how the narrative that pyramid laborers were treated really well only kind of exists to further this particularly exoticized picture of ancient Egypt, as well as helps to further pharaonic propaganda. That what's important is that I left her a long comment saying that she was heavily oversimplifying the conversation and kind of falling for pharaonic propaganda, and she replied by saying, yeah, this has the same energy as someone just saying like, take that, liberal, like it's such a non-response. Which Harvard source are you talking about? Who wrote it? When was it published? Simply throwing around the name of a major university does not make you right as much as you wish that it did. This is a large part of Shan's content. She makes these clickbaity videos about, lies we were told that aren't even really lies. She just takes dumbed down statements that we use in place of complex explanations for children and then claims that we were somehow lied to. If you tell a kid that the sky is blue, even though it's not technically blue, that's not a lie. That's the simpler explanation. This content format really irritates me because I feel like it plies on people's mistrust in the system, encouraging them to further disconnect from their education in a world where schools are already severely underfunded. Like, I'm sorry, but you weren't lied to. You were just too uncurious to go and look into it yourself. Shan belongs to a particular type of creator that I really struggle with how to approach. She doesn't overtly say that you should trust her word on things, but she also strongly positions herself as a real authority figure on most of her posts. And then when people disagree with her or gently try to correct her, she gets really aggressive really quickly. Sure, she posts about overlooked women in history, but she also posts about neural dust and says that they are controlling us through the screens. And she posts about politics, specifically left-leaning politics. And while I find myself agreeing with her on numerous of her politically related posts, all of these posts are designed with the same distrust of institutions and education and the same authoritative defensive tone when she is questioned. Like, her bio literally says, fascinating facts, deep dives, and connections you didn't notice. Connections? Like liking comments saying that data centers are something else in a video where you're posting about the new one currently trying to be built in Utah? Or making videos that underhandedly imply that hantavirus was an intentional disaster?
And they just threw these samples in the trash after they were done with them. Like, how does this happen? It seems very coincidental that this happened this exact way, that 12 people just decided not to follow the strict procedure, knowing the consequences and how big of a story this is and how big of a story the cruise ship is, that they just decided to not follow the procedure. Yeah, because that just happens.
You're not sharing fascinating facts. You're normalizing conspiracy theories to a left-wing audience. And you're doing this while disseminating fear-mongering, inclined information. The language she uses, to me, feels like it was designed not to inform people but to scare them. She called the fact that passengers who had previously left the Hondia ship prior to the hantavirus cases being discovered were not contacted until it was confirmed to be hantavirus, quote, suspicious at the very least. This is way too convenient, Shan says about hantavirus. Like, I'm sorry, but this is so incredibly irresponsible and anti-intellectual that I'm genuinely frustrated. I mean, this woman is also liking comments implying that Hurricane Katrina was the result of cloud seeding. Are you kidding me? And she has hundreds of videos like this. She made a video about the Anunnaki and invented a whole story about their origins in the Book of Enoch. And when I say invented, I mean, I'm pretty sure she made it up. She acts as though voice-to-skull technology, as in digital telepathy, is a real thing. She's a 9/11 theorizer? I don't want to say denier, but she certainly thinks unique things about it. She thinks that Chris Blesto is somehow able to tell the future and predicted the US and Israeli war on Iran. How do you approach this type of content? How do you interact with this type of insane, intense information environment? How do we approach this with rationality, with a scientifically inclined intention? And how do we dismantle this type of misinformation? This irks me because I know better than what she's saying, and because I know that you do too. You deserve better than underhanded speculations about human deaths from a deadly disease. You deserve better than to be told lies about your own history. You deserve better with someone who feels zero need to interact with you in good faith if you so much as dare to question them. The other thing that gets me about this creator is that, in my opinion, to me, leftist politics are about community. They're about collectivism. And when you have an entire platform dedicated to speculating about natural disasters and somehow even the literal Titanic, it serves to utterly undermine whatever vague democratic filter you're trying to put in front of it. My leftist beliefs extend again to education and the right to information, which is part of why I'm so consistently bothered by this type of content. Like, seriously, you're taking advantage of someone who is undereducated by a school system that left them in the dust, appealing to their own mistrust of that system with your veneer of community, and then potentially profiting off of that same mistrust, all while feeding them lies about alternate history. Am I insane, or does this type of content creator absolutely just take advantage of people's existing mistrust and valid fears in order to make a profit? Listen, I know this is long-winded. I know I might seem like I'm talking a lot and saying very little, but I'm trying to explain how I got to this point and why I'm so quick to hold these people to their word. I think this content model is genuinely harmful, and it alarms me. I think it takes advantage of systematic inequalities to exploit your fear of a very messed up and scary world, and I frankly have no clue how to deal with them. I don't know if there's much that can be done, which sounds depressing, except for pointing it out and dismantling it as it comes. Like, maybe this is a power of friendship situation and we all just have to hold hands and yell at them together. But please do not go and yell or harass any of these people or anyone who makes similar content to them. I don't really think that online harassment is effective. I think that information communication is effective. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not even confident that the sort of content that I make, debunking informative content, is the right answer. But I do know that their model is wrong. And I hope that by doing more of what I do, it might help someone find their way to reason and towards a type of learning that they love. We all deserve education. We all deserve to know the truth about our world. And I'm really glad that I'm in a position where I can help share the beautiful history, culture, and languages of this planet that we all live on. And I hope that you'll feel compelled to maybe share in it too. In the future, I'm going to make more debunking content. I am going to make more science communication content. And I might make some videos about linguistics. We're gonna see. It all depends on what you guys want to see first. If you want more debunking, I can totally do that. If you want a really long-winded video about ancient Egypt, I can probably do that too. If you want a really long one about linguistics, I can figure that out. Let me know. The comments are there for a reason. Happy Pride Month, my friends, and I will see you when I see you. Peace out.